I didn't hear the rest of his sentence. Not because he stopped speaking, but because the sound inside my skull went white and sharp, like someone had slammed a metal door behind my eyes. The taxi exhaust still clung to my clothes, hot and sour. A smell that didn't belong in the marble hallway of my grandparents' house. A place where everything was polished, curated, perfect. Unlike my life. The car's in the shop, I muttered. It wasn't. I just couldn't stand being in it anymore. Not after what happened yesterday. Not after what I saw. Grandpa narrowed his eyes. He wasn't one to probe unless he thought he had to. Today he did. His gaze lingered on me longer than usual. Maybe he sensed something in my face. Something cracked, something leaking through. But before he asked anything else, my grandmother called him from the living room, and he disappeared, leaving me alone in the entryway with the lies tightening around my ribs. I took a breath. It didn't help. Yesterday kept replaying in flashes, like a fever looping the same nightmare. Maya's perfume in the car. The unfamiliar jacket in the back seat. Her laughter bright strained wrong when I asked about it. And then her phone lighting up while she showered. A name I didn't recognize. A message I shouldn't have read. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can we see each other again? My finger hovered above the screen, paralyzed as the tiny typing dots appeared. Miss you already. I heard the shower running. I remember gripping the phone so hard my nails bit into my palm. The steam from the bathroom seeped through the crack under the door, curling around my feet like fog rising from hell. I put the phone back exactly where it was. I don't know why. Maybe denial. Maybe fear. Maybe because facing it meant everything I'd built with her. Every quiet morning, every intertwined promise, every stupid little ritual, was about to collapse. I wish I could say I confronted her immediately. I didn't. I walked out instead. Mechanically. Like my limbs belonged to someone else. I drove around aimlessly in the BMW for hours until the city lights blurred and smeared across the windshield. I couldn't bring myself to go home. Not to the apartment we shared. Not with the bed we loved in and fought in and dreamed in. So I went to my grandparents' house, arriving so late the taxi driver glanced at me in the mirror twice, like I was something dangerous or broken. Which brings me back to now, standing in their hallway, heart jammed tight in my throat. Come inside, sweetheart, Grandma called. Her voice, gentle and warm as always, almost cracked me open. I swallowed hard and walked in. They were sitting on the sofa, the TV showing an old crime drama they both pretended they understood but always asked me to explain. The smell of cardamom tea wafted toward me, the kind Maya loved, the kind she'd make on Sunday mornings while humming softly. My chest tightened. I sat opposite them, forcing a smile. You look tired, Grandma said, studying me like a puzzle missing half its pieces. I didn't sleep well. Trouble at work? Grandpa asked. If only it were that simple. No. Just a lot on my mind. He glanced at Grandma. They exchanged a look. The kind people share when they know something is wrong, but don't know if they're allowed to ask. I was grateful they didn't. We talked for a while about harmless things. Weather, groceries, the neighbor's new dog. My answers were automatic, clipped, but they didn't push. They'd always given me space to unravel privately. But as the conversation drifted, my mind kept replaying yesterday's fragments. The message, the shower, the silence between Maya and me growing so sharp it could cut skin. I should have confronted her. Should have demanded an explanation. Should have screamed, cried something. Instead, I'd left her a note saying I needed space. And then I vanished to my grandparents' house like a coward. I kept glancing at my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Which hurt more than I expected. Everything okay? Grandma asked softly. I jolted. Yeah. Fine. She didn't believe me. I could tell. She always could. But she didn't pry. Her eyes just softened. An invitation, not a command. I looked down at my hands. My fingers trembled. I curled them into fists. Do you want to stay the night? She asked. I nodded. If that's okay. Of course it is. Grandpa stood up. I'll make up the guest room. I tried to help, but he waved me off with a stern expression. The kind that meant sit down before you make me lecture you. So I stayed with Grandma, drinking tea that tasted like comfort and regret. Around midnight, when they'd gone to bed, I finally let myself breathe. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator. My phone buzzed. My heart slammed. A message from Maya. I stared at the screen, afraid to open it. Afraid not to. Finally, I tapped it. Maya. Where are you? Please come home. We need to talk. My stomach twisted. The sensible part of me, the one that remembered the good in her, wanted to call. Wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Wanted to believe the message I saw was innocent, platonic, explainable. But another part of me, the one that saw the typing dots, the jacket, the distance in her eyes recently, tightened like a fist. I typed a reply. Then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. After 8 minutes of staring at a blank chat bubble, I locked the phone and pressed it against my forehead, trying to breathe through the ache spreading beneath my ribs. Footsteps approached softly. Grandma peeked into the living room. Sweetheart. I straightened, wiping at nothing. Sorry, did I wake you? No. I just had a feeling you weren't asleep. She walked in and sat beside me. Her presence, gentle and grounded, loosened something in my chest. You don't have to tell me, she whispered. But you look like someone who's holding too much alone. I stared at my hands. The words hovered behind my teeth like frightened birds. I could have told her everything. Could have spilled the truth. But saying it aloud meant accepting it. So instead I said, I think something's wrong with Maya. Grandma's expression didn't change, but her hand squeezed mine. Wrong how? I shook my head. I don't know yet. A lie. And not a good one. She messaged you? Yes. Do you want to talk to her? I don't know. The helplessness in my voice cracked something in her, I think. She took a slow breath. When your grandfather and I were younger, she began, there was a time when I thought I was going to lose him. I blinked. What? Why? He had secrets, she said simply. Ones he wasn't ready to share. And I assumed the worst. What happened? I confronted him. And it turned out I was right about some things, and wrong about others. But the talking saved us. Not the waiting. Her words landed heavy. Sometimes the truth hurts less than the stories we invent in the dark, she finished gently. I swallowed. I'm scared, I admitted. I know. And she just stayed beside me, not pushing, not judging. Just there. Around 1 a.m. she returned to bed. I remained on the couch, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion finally dragged my eyelids down. But sleep didn't stay long. At 3:17 a.m. my phone buzzed again. Another message from Maya. Then another. Then a call. Then another. I didn't answer. But she kept trying. And each vibration drilled deeper into my chest. Eventually the buzzing stopped. Silence returned. Heavier. Colder. Final. I thought that was the end of it for the night. I was wrong. At 3:41 a.m., a new message appeared. Not from Maya. From an unknown number. Unknown. You should know the truth before she tells you her version. My blood went cold. I stared at the message, pulse pounding in my throat. Then another text arrived. Unknown, meet me tomorrow. It's about Maya. A chill crawled down my spine. I didn't recognize the number. But my instincts, numb, raw, screaming, knew exactly who it belonged to. The man from the message. The one she missed already. The one she spent yesterday with. The one she thought I'd never discover. I sat frozen, breath barely moving. Tomorrow everything would break open. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth at all. The man in the cafe looked like someone who liked to be seen as harmless. Worn coat, careful hands, the kind of face that had learned to keep small secrets folded in tight. He introduced himself as Amir and slid his phone across the table like a slab of ice. You don't know me, he said. But I know you. I saw you at the market last week. You were with Maya. My throat went dry. My pulse did the stupid, traitorous thing of promising adrenaline it couldn't deliver. Amir showed me a string of messages. Nothing poetic, short, efficient, businesslike invites to meet. Then a photo, grainy as an old postcard. Maya and an older man in a small cafe, leaning so close the camera caught the curve of their shoulders pressed together. The man's hair was silver at the temples. The jawline my stomach pitched, matched my grandfather's profile in half a dozen family photos. It's her, Amir said quietly. She thinks he doesn't know he's being photographed. She meets him at these tiny places. She thinks she's being careful. My hands tightened on the cup until it gave a hollow clink. The air in the cafe was suddenly too warm, too loud, plates, forks, laughter, like a film soundtrack playing someone else's life. Why tell me? I asked, but even that question felt stupid. The answer was obvious, because someone had to. Amir's eyes were kind and tired. Because I once loved someone who believed secrets kept them safe. They don't. I'm sorry. He didn't need to be. I paid and left a small bill for him anyway, because leaving nothing felt worse than guilt. The drive home was a stretch of static and red lights. I should have called Maya. I didn't. Confronting immediately felt like throwing myself into a pit I couldn't climb out of. Instead, I drove the long way, past the river where the city lights melted into a smear of orange, past the 24-hour bakery that still had dough rising in the windows. I drove until I reached the low hedges of my grandparents' house. The front door was ajar. Inside, the living room smelled like cardamom and wet rain. A lamp threw a pool of light across the coffee table. Grandpa was sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug, his posture too small for the chair. He looked up when I came in, and something in his face folded into shame before it had a chance to become anger. "You found out," he said, not a question so much as an admission. It should have been the strangest reply, but the way he said it made the world tilt. "Did you set him up?" I asked, because the photos Amir showed me were crisp, too telling to be accidental. Grandpa's mouth moved like he was tasting words. "No. He stopped. Then slowly, "I thought I could. I thought I could fix things." "Fix what?" The silence answered before he did. "Everything." I had always believed my grandfather's morality was simple, stern, old-fashioned, and utterly reliable. I clung to that like a buoy in a storm. Seeing his hands tremble around a mug pulled that buoy out from under me. "Why?" My voice was small and ugly. "Why her? Why now?" He closed his eyes. "Because when your father died, I saw you drown. I thought money could put you on shore. The car, I gave you the BMW because I wanted you to have a chance. I didn't think it would become a wedge between you. I thought." "You thought what?" I asked, the hurt a living thing in my throat. "That buying a life would buy love? That your gifts could silence everything?" He flinched like I'd struck him. "I didn't want you to hate me. I wanted you to be happy." The words were a child's plea and an emperor's command all at once. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, because movement distracted from the pulse in my ears. That's when I found the other evidence. A receipt, 2 cups of coffee listed under my name, a note in my grandfather's handwriting. "Went to see her." "I'm sorry." The paper blurred. When Maya came in that evening, later than her messages had suggested, later than the unknown number's warning, she moved like a woman who expected the house to be the same as when she left it, on its axis, familiar and forgiving. She stopped when she saw me. For a moment there was only the sound of rain against the kitchen window, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic like an answering heartbeat. "Are you?" Her voice cut into the dark. "Are you okay?" I wanted to ask if she'd ever been sorry. I wanted to demand everything and then nothing, to scald her with questions until she bled truth. Instead, the question that came was small and brittle. "Who is he?" Maya's face dove into a map of expressions. Who are you talking about?" "Your photos," I said. "The man you were meeting." The color fled from her face. Her fingers trembled, reaching for a cup like for a lifeline. "You saw?" "Yes." She laughed then, short and sharp and incredulous. "You found out the way everyone does, through someone else's courage. You were meeting my grandfather." The words tasted like iron. Maya's hands fell into her lap. "Yes." Every panic I'd rehearsed, denial, rationalization, fury, rode in on a different wave, each one bigger and meaner. The betrayal I'd imagined was brutal and direct. Another man, stolen nights, explanations that would crush me. This was worse. This wormed through family bones. "You slept with him," I said, because language felt like the only proven thing. She closed her eyes. "I didn't sleep with him for years," she whispered. It was a mistake at first." "What mistake?" I asked. The house was too small for the noise in my head. She told me then, in a voice that shredded itself with each sentence, that Grandpa had been lonely, that he'd been kind in ways that made her soft, that he'd given them money when our rent went unpaid, that their hands had touched once and turned into more, that guilt had made them furtive and secretive and then addicted. She painted nothing as beautiful. She painted it as human. Messy, selfish, repentant. You could have told me, I said. You could have told me we could have gone to counseling. We could have. We could, she agreed. I know. I should have been brave. There was truth in that. But there was also a raw, ugly thing like a fissure. She hadn't told me because she was ashamed. She hadn't told me because the shame felt like bruises on her ribs and she'd wanted to hide it, not fix it. Anger came like a fever. How long? She sagged. 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of breakfasts and shared toothbrushes and small, ordinary betrayals. Her pulling away on the couch, the way she'd avoid my hand in public, the tiny silences that had become gulfs. I wanted her to hurt. I wanted to break her the way I felt broken. Instead I felt something colder, more precise, settle into place. A calculation. If he gave you money, I said, voice thinning, was it for us? For me? For the car? Maya's mouth trembled. No. He offered help. I accepted. I'm sorry. Grandpa shuffled into the kitchen then, the hem of his robe frayed, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked at Maya, then at me, and the weight of whatever he carried seemed to compress the air. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said. I wanted to help. I was selfish. I'm sorry. His apology was small and huge at once. You slept with my partner, I said. You ruined things between us. You ruined them for your grandson. His shoulders curled. I know. I know. The three of us sat in a crooked, impossible triangle of grief. Grandma came out then in her robe, hair in a messy knot like a halo of ordinary wisdom. She looked at all of us, at the man she'd loved for 50 years, at the woman she'd accepted into the family as if she were her own, and at her grandson with eyes that saw everything and wasn't surprised by any of it. What were you thinking? She asked quietly, not accusing but searching. Grandpa lowered his head. Maya whispered. I wasn't thinking. None of us were thinking, Grandma said. We were running on hope and shame and bad timing. But secrets live. They eat at every good thing you try to build. She turned to me. If you want to leave, go. Don't let pity or anger tie you to something you don't want. But if you stay, don't make yourself smaller to fit someone else's sins. There was something surprising in her voice. Mercy, perhaps, or a recognition that human lives aren't tidy. It steadied me in a way I hadn't expected. I left that night. I took the taxi because I couldn't sit in a car that reminded me of 1,000 things that had been given and bought and withheld. Grandpa's question. Why did you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we gave you for? Hung over us all, unfinished, accusatory, fragile. He'd handed me a car, polished it with his hands, and thought currency could replace conversation. It was an indictment I didn't want to admit applied to me as much as to him. The next morning I drove to the river instead of home. The city was quiet. The sky was a pale bruise. I walked along the embankment until the water whispered the same truth in different tones. Everything changes. Later that week, things shifted again in a way I hadn't predicted. Amir texted me a link to a small, almost anonymous forum where people told their stories of betrayal and forgiveness. One entry, short, raw, was about a woman who'd left a marriage because it had been hollowed out by secrets. Another was from a man who forgave not because he was weak but because he was tired of hating. I thought of Grandma's words. I thought of Maya's apology and Grandpa's small, ragged remorse. I thought of the way love and guilt had braided together until no one knew the beginning of one thread and the end of another. I met Maya again, this time at a park bench under a tree that had begun to lose its leaves. We talked for hours, each sentence a tiny excavation of why and how. There was no neatly packaged resolution. There was only the slow, painful negotiation of whether to rebuild something on a foundation shaken to its core. And in the darkest moment, when everything felt raw and impossible, when it would have been easier to walk away and never look back, I found myself surprised by a new clarity. Betrayal had been done to me. Betrayal had been done by me too, by my silence, by the way I'd allowed small distances to open into canyons. The twist, the one that pounded into me like a last undeniable truth, wasn't just that Maya had been with my grandfather. It was this. The people who hurt us most are often the ones trying, in their own clumsy, broken ways, To save something they can't name. That didn't excuse them. It complicated them. When I finally answered Grandpa's unfinished sentence weeks later, when he asked me across the breakfast table, voice small as if testing fragile glass, I said, "You gave me a car for a life you wanted for me. You forgot to give me the one thing that mattered most. The courage to say the hard things." He nodded, the weight of his guilt settling into his bones. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. It wasn't the ending I'd wanted, and it wasn't the clean betrayal I'd planned revenge for. It was messy and human and bloody and possible. It left me with choices, to hold on to the shape of what was, or to let it fall and learn what might grow from the rubble." When I looked at Maya, I didn't see only the woman who had betrayed me. I saw her as someone who had erred, repented, and was now learning the costs. The BMW sat outside in the driveway like an accusation and a relic, its paint dull with rain. I touched the hood, felt the cold metal, and understood that some things can be fixed. Others must be mourned. The final twist, the one that tightened around my chest and wouldn't loosen, was this. I had expected to be the betrayed man who walked away with righteous fire. Instead, I became the man who had to decide whether forgiveness could be an act of strength or a surrender to convenience. The choice was mine, and that, more than any scandal, terrified me.